All right, so today we're going to be talking about icons of the gangster film genre, right? So before we talk about actual icons, we have to kind of define what an icon is. So for this presentation, I'll be referring to the Rough Guide of Gangster Movies, right? So this is a very informative book that talks about the history of icons and the formulas used to make a gangster movie, right? By Lloyd. So what an icon is pretty much somebody who has had an influence on the genre itself and has made it popular, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that the actor played this role once. It mostly takes an actor multiple attempts. So they usually play the same role multiple times in order for them to become iconic in a role. So, for example, Robert De Niro, he plays a lot of gangsters, not only because he plays a lot of gangsters, but because he has had an impact with his performance, right? So here's a quick definition of what an icon is: or thing widely admired and recognized for having great influence or significance in a particular sphere. We're going to be talking about the icons or the people that had an impact on the gangster genre, right? So what are some of the early icons that came out of the gangster genre? So some of our early icons come out of movies like The Public Enemy, Little Caesar, and Scarface, right? So those are considered to be the first three gangster movies that really had an impact on society at the time, right? So these are actors as James Cagney, Edward G. Robinson, Paul Mooney, and George Raft. So these would be considered the four pioneers or the four original gangsters of the gangster genre. And a lot of personalities or a lot of characters are adapted from these original four. And at the same time, these were also the pioneers that brought a lot of the stereotypes to the persona, right? They're the ones who really molded the characters. Something that's tricky is that once you get labeled into this gangster character, it's really hard for a actor to get any jobs outside of that mold of the gangster, right? So it's really two options, one of two. Either the actor himself decides that that's what he wants to do, he's okay with accepting the roles over and over and over, and he's content with making money and making his career just playing that one character. Or the second option is that studios generally that's all they offer the actor. They're stuck, right? They're in a cage. Studios under contract are only willing to offer actors that role. So it's really one of two options when it comes to icons of the gangster genre. They either willingly do it for the money, or they're just stuck under contract by studio execs. And again, the only way that really actors would get out of this is just the law of diminishing returns, right? So when studios start to notice that the actor is no longer being a cash cow and is no longer really selling the movie, that's when studios really decide to retire the actor. This is another aspect that people always like to bring up, that, oh, this movie is so authentic, it's so real because they had real criminals, real prisoners. But that's been an old trick. It's been used since the inception of the gangster genre. So here it says they featured real life gangsters among the cast. So again, it's not unique for newer directors in like Menace Society, Mi Vida Loca, Blood In, Blood Out, for them to say, oh, this is authentic. We have real criminals, people that come from that life. Again, if we refer back to history, every time there has been a gangster movie, directors have always tried to use that. And it's just a selling point. It's just a way for them to sell the movie, is to add that layer of quote unquote authenticity. But we see that Scarface 1932 used it, and other movies throughout the decades have used that same trick. So now we're going to look at the four pioneers at the top. So I pretty much labeled the four original gangsters up on top, and then at the bottom, I pretty much put the new generation or gangsters that we kind of are familiar with um, now. So on the top left, we have Edward, followed by James, Paul, and George. Again, these were the actors that pretty much molded the gangster persona. They're the ones who came up with the style, the stereotypes. Um, this is what the image or the refined image of the gangster looked like post World War One. And then we see how when it comes to white gangster icons, they pretty much kept the same mold, right? These are characters that still dressed in suits. They pretty much have a backstory where they come from the streets, but yet they get refined to be able to socialize in high class. So now we're going to look at Black gangster icons, and we start to see that there's a difference, right? Why is it that the Black gangster icon no longer continues to honor that tradition of being a man in a suit, a man that is able to navigate both the streets but also the high class, right? Now we see that studios pretty much tether and they just leave the gangster icon to the streets, and we never really see them go into large yacht parties or mansion parties, but they pretty much just are kept in the streets, right? So at the top we have some gangster personas that are well known for a couple years now, and then at the lower bottom we're starting to see the next generation of that gangster icon, right? And then we're going to move over to the way Latino gangsters are represented, right? So at the top we have the old school gangster personas that we really recognize, like Edward, Danny, Noel, and Benjamin, right? And then at the bottom we see the next generation. So we see how, compared to the white gangster icons who are dressed up in suits, who we generally see in yacht parties or we see at mansion parties, the Black and Latino icons are always just seen in the ghetto, right? Studios paint this new image that the gangster, it remains pure in its white form, but when we see the gangster in the Black or the Latino form, it's no longer in that refined suit. They're just in the wife beaters and the flannels, tattooed. And a question is that we have to ask ourselves: why do studios feed us this image of what a white gangster should be, what a Black gangster should be, and what a brown Latino gangster should be? Why is it three different types of gangsters? Why couldn't the Black gangster keep the suit? Here we have Denzel Washington, but for the most part, the other actors have pretty much not kept that tradition. And again, this doesn't have to do with the actors themselves, but the studios in general. This is what studios are funding. This is what the message that studios want to put across to audiences. Same thing goes with the Latino gangster or the brown gangster, right? These are people that are always in their wife beaters. They're always seems like they're always rocking the same chains, the tattoos, um, the facial expressions, right? They're always angry. They're frustrated. But when we look at the charisma of the white gangster, they're always happy. They're always charming. And the question I want to pose to you as the audience is, why do we accept that? Black and Latino audiences, we accept these characters that come out in Mi Vida Loca, Blood In, Blood Out, or Menace to Society. A huge difference also that we could see between the three different types of gangsters is that the white gangster pretty much remains pure, right? If you notice, the characters aren't branded, there's no logos. They pretty much kept the same tradition of the suit, as opposed to the Black gangster, where we see that a lot of them is more branded, right? That has different company logos, that has different writing on it, and it's not that pure advertise free. But now we see that the Black and the Latino body have turned into billboards for companies to fund these projects, right? So we have companies from different apparel brands give money to studios, and now these actors become billboards. So then the audience members could go out and purchase the different apparel, the shoes, the hat, the shirt. And we see the same thing with Latino characters that rock certain types of shoes, they rock certain types of hats, they rock certain types of branded apparel. So then audience members in return go out and buy these um, particular types of shoes, these particular types of clothing. So now if you just take a moment to reflect, you might consider, wow, I never thought that because of certain characters, I was influenced to go out and purchase certain types of shoes, certain types of shirts, certain types of chains. Again, this is just a quick summary of what makes up an icon. And I just want to put into question why the gangster icon has remained pure from white gangster icons from the 1930s to today. Yet the Black and Latino gangsters have really been disassociated from the suit, and they're always seen um, wearing wife beaters or wearing flannels or wearing really branded gear, right? So Black and brown audiences could go out and purchase those things. What would happen if studios decided to represent the Black and Latino gangsters in suit? Okay, well, that's it for today. And so if you have any questions or comments, please leave them down and I'll try to answer them all.